here for Love and Division. I'm going to do part 2 of Christianity and Red Ice. This is not some kind of attack on Red Ice. I'm a big supporter of Red Ice. I just want to, clarify some of the differences between, the Christian worldview and the Red Ice worldview, and how we can work together, and where our differences are irreconcilable. Let me first. I guess I'll do that later on. I'll do some my usual New York Times analysis. But let's get into the Red Ice and Christianity. One of the things that they bring up a lot is the Scofield Bible. And the Scofield Bible was written with commentary. It was first published in 1909. And the commentary is dispensationalist. And if you're not familiar with dispensationalism, that's the school of biblical hermeneutics, I guess you'd call it, that suggests that there's these different dispensations during the course of God's relationship with men. And right now we're living in this dispensation of grace. And the dispensation that intersects the Red Ice agenda is the dealings with Israel and the land of Israel and so forth. Red Ice often suggests that the Scofield Bible is the main influence behind Christian Zionism. And I think that's only partly true, but it's partly a moot point, because the idea that God is going to bring the Jews back to the land of Israel in the end times is in the scripture itself and predates the Scofield Bible. So it's not like the Scofield Bible introduced that idea. The Scofield Bible emphasized that in opposition to some of the other schools of thought, like replacement theology and so forth, where often there are Christians who believe that the modern land of Israel is not a fulfillment of prophecy. It's just, I don't know what you'd call it. It's just a circumstance. It's just something to have, But I believe that the promises to return the Jewish people to the land of Israel are not contingent on the behavior of those people. That even the first time God led them into that land, it wasn't contingent on their behavior. The staying in the land was contingent, but not getting there. And that I think this is the same thing. And there's plenty of scriptural passages from the prophets and the narrative books and so forth, Exodus and Genesis and so forth, that establish this idea that the Jewish people would be back in that land at the end times. It's not unique to Scofield. So here's the damage: is not being Christian Zionists. The damage comes, I think, when Christians seem to think that the Jews should be able to get away with murder, that they should be able to do whatever they want to. And I'm not opposed to the you call it, the deportation of Palestinians. I think that just like any other nation, you have situations where, look at how we displaced the Americans, for instance, displaced the American Indians. The reason I'm not opposed to it, I just think that this is what's supposed to happen right now. And the thing is, what we should be doing, and I said this in other videos, Donald Trump should be trading Jews for Palestinians. I mean, we could take 1,000 Palestinians in exchange for George Soros and Henry Kissinger. That way, you see, that's what we should be doing. In other words, I don't support any kind of violent expulsion. These things could be done peacefully, and in the same way that Adolf Hitler was setting out to do in Germany back in World War II. It was meant to be a peaceful expulsion, and the Jews who control the international banks and everything like that are the ones that turned it into a big war and bloodbath by hiring Winston Churchill and Woodrow Wilson to and also, of course, supporting the Bolsheviks. The idea, here's the idea in World War II, and I'm reading Hitler's second book. I'm going to do a YouTube video on it. It's pretty darn interesting. But Hitler failed to recognize the fact that Britain and the United States were already well in the pockets of the international Jew. The international banking cartel already owned the United States and Great Britain. So he made that mistake, of thinking that somehow, there wasn't going to be so much opposition from there. But so I'm going to read that book someday on a YouTube video and analyze it and so forth. So I want to talk also about this synagogue of Satan thing. Okay, so and then I'll get back to Red Ice a little more about why as a Christian I support Red Ice. It's not because I believe the same things they believe in terms of spirituality and so forth. It's just that I believe that God's using them right now because ultimately God uses often pagan nations to discipline the Jewish people. And so that's what that's why I support Red Ice, because I think they're being used by God for that purpose. So the synagogue of Satan is a phrase that comes up in the book of Revelation, and it's Jesus talking. He's dictating letters to the 7 churches, and he's talking about those who call themselves Jews and are not. So let me see if I can pick up this passage and get the context. Okay, let's see. Revelation, synagogue of Satan. Okay. Okay. All right, let's see. Okay, here we go. Revelation 3:9. Okay. Okay, and this is Jesus dictating a letter. I will make those who are the synagogue of Satan, who claim to be Jews, though they are not, but are liars, I will make them come and fall down at your feet and acknowledge that I have loved you. Okay, so um, here's where this passage is often misused by the Schofield Bible crowd, for instance. Okay, that they're trying to say that the replacement theologians who are saying that they're Jews and are not are, the synagogue of Satan, or sometimes you hear people saying, Ashkenazi people who aren't really like genetically that Jewish. Sometimes that's inserted there, but it's usually used against the idea that people are saying the Jews, the people that are there now are Jews, and Jesus is trying to defend, say, the people that are in Israel now calling themselves Jews, and the people are saying they're not. But I really don't think that's correct. I think the correct way to interpret the synagogue of Satan, those who say they're Jews that are not, is talking about the faith, the Jewish faith, that since Jesus came, you can't be Jewish by faith if you don't believe that Jesus is the Messiah. So anybody who's Jewish is holding on to some kind of Jewish religion or faith or anything like that, that does not acknowledge Jesus as the Messiah, that's the synagogue of Satan. Because true Judaism now believes that Jesus is the Messiah since Jesus came. So if Jews are holding on to some kind of religious expression that doesn't include Jesus as Messiah, then that's the synagogue of Satan, because it's not a legitimate religion. Jesus is the one who gave it the legitimacy as the Messiah. So that's the synagogue of Satan. The synagogue of Satan is anything that's considered the Jewish religion that doesn't have Jesus as the Messiah. So that would be Reformed, conservative, Orthodox Judaism is the synagogue of Satan. And then that has nothing to do. This is a different. It's a different subject. It's apples and oranges with the land of Israel and Jews living in the land of Israel, because you can be Jewish and be the synagogue of Satan. You are Jewish by the flesh, but not by the faith. See, this is how I unpack this. Okay. In the Bible, ever since Abraham, God has had believers who God separated out the ethnic Hebrews, and these ethnic Hebrews were the children. These were the Jews by flesh. So you have Jews by flesh and you have Jews by faith, and this has always been the case ever since the beginning, when God first isolated the Jewish people, and brought that particular family out and started to establish that particular identity group. And there was always the ones that believed in the promises of God, that were the true Jews by faith, and you always had Jews by flesh. And so you could be both. Some people could be both a Jew by faith and Jew by flesh. Some are just Jews by flesh only. Now, God made promises to both groups. There's promises made to the flesh-only Jews, and there's promises made to the faith Jews. And now, since Jesus came, a faith Jew is one who believes in Jesus. You can still be Jewish by the flesh and not believe in Jesus, but you're no longer Jew by faith, because the true Jewish faith requires that you believe that Jesus is the Messiah. And that's where all the confusion comes in, because people think there's such thing as a legitimate Jewish religion. No, if they don't believe in Jesus as the Messiah, then it's illegitimate. It's the synagogue of Satan, and that's the whole distinction. That's why the early apostles all lost their lives. That's why Jesus was killed and so forth, because they were standing up to him, confronting and challenging this idea that you could believe and obey the true God of Abraham and reject Jesus. You can't do that. The rejection of Jesus is the rejection of the God of Abraham. So they're really worshiping over there is Satan, and it's true. Now here's where this is the weirdest thing. Okay, about red ice and these passages that they will acknowledge this idea that what's going on now with the Jews in Israel and so forth, they're preparing for the what the true religion calls the false Messiah, the Antichrist. So they're really preparing for the Antichrist. It's the synagogue of Satan, and that's all they're going to end up with is the Antichrist. And Henrik Palmgren will admit to that scenario, but he dismisses, and this is where red ice and Christianity are not on the same pages. He dismisses the idea that this is a God initiated project. That this is like a true God doing this. It's not just mythology. And this brings up the next point of Christianity and red ice is the mythology aspects of paganism. And the way Henrik deals with this material is he seems to think that you can only have human generated realities. You don't have human generated gods and human generated myths and so forth. I don't know if I'm assuming that he doesn't take the Nephilim and the falling angels thing to be a real phenomenon, because see, I don't think he doesn't give the European people enough credit in terms of why so many of them received Christianity or accepted that the gospel or whatever, however you want to put it. Because look, let's suppose you were a Swede, living in the 1600s, whatever, and you were familiar with the Norse gods and the mythology surrounding, and you may have even been a scholar enough to the point where you actually associated these with the fallen angels. The fallen angels were the things that spawned these mythological gods, and so they were, at one point there wasn't mythology. They were real giants and real half-breeds between humans and fallen angels and so forth. They were roaming the earth, and this was the generation of those myths that as these people died off and so forth, they left these legacies and stories that came up around them and so forth. And I have a friend who's studying the Norse god mythology and so forth, and as far as he could tell, a lot of it is just the gods talking amongst themselves, and humans, they weren't really, humans were very secondary to what they were doing. I mean, you figure, okay, if the biblical story would have these fallen angels who had relations with human women, and they brought forth this generation of giants, and Um, and the idea was for them to pollute the human genome so that the Messiah could not be born, because he had to be born of a human, because he was coming to save humans. And so that was one of the main reasons for the flood of Noah, was to kill off this adulterated genetic material and save Noah. And there's a lot of people that believe that was Noah's distinction, why he was considered righteous, is because his bloodline, his genetics were not adulterated with the whole Nephilim phenomena. And I think that there's also, well, let me continue to finish. Okay, so the Bible has the Jews going into Canaan and wiping out these people, these giants and so forth, and getting rid of them, and trying to get it was sort of what you call an ethnic cleansing, I suppose, but it was a sort of a non-human ethnicity. Although it seems to me that when Jesus came, the idea that the kingdom of God was open to all people, that even if you're someone like, there's stories, there's theories that maybe red-haired people, blue-eyed or green-eyed people had gotten those character traits from the fallen angels, that's part of the genetic expression when it's been watered down so many generations amongst humans only, and that even in that case you can still be saved. That's part of the theory there. But at any rate, I would think that the way I interpret Red Ice's interpretation is that they're stopping short of the reality that a lot of what they're calling myth, it was not mythology at all. It was just fallen angels. And so you're a Swede living in the 16th century, and you come across this information from the Bible about these genealogies, these continuous genealogies of humans that go up to all the way up through Joseph and Jesus and so forth. You can use your intellect and decide, say, okay, well, would I rather side with fallen angels or side with the Son of God? And this is how they're looking at it. And so you can be a European and receive the gospel as something that is that you're interpreting as being a true history, and a sort of you choose your side, so to speak, and so you can use your intellect and say, okay, well, I would rather side with the Son of God than the son of demons or whatever. See? And that's a big difference, between Christians and Red Ice. Now, but I do believe that Red Ice is playing an instrumental part in this, and I hope they succeed. I mean, look at Jeremiah. When Jeremiah was prophesying, he was telling the Israelis, look, the Babylonians are coming. God is behind that, and you need to go into captivity, and you need to accept that. See? And so I'm sort of saying, look, the Jewish people have started World War I. Millions of people died so that they could gain power. World War II, millions of people died so they can gain more power. And as recently as 9/11, they were behind 9/11. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure that out. You scratch below the surface and you see, it was Israeli and American Jews that orchestrated 9/11. And so these are things that, if you read in the Bible, these are the kinds of offenses that God would wake up and say, hey, you know what, I'm not going to put up with this anymore. I'm going to raise up a pagan nation to discipline, these Jewish people. And often when God's doing something like this, he's killing many birds with one stone. And one of the other things, I'm going to fulfill prophecies pertaining to the expulsion of Jews from the world and pushed all into Israel. And once they're in Israel, that's as far as I go. In other words, I can support the pagans as far as they're expelling the Jewish control freaks and sending them back to Israel. But if they go further than that, and according to the Bible, they're going to go further and actually attack Israel. And that's where as a Christian, I can't support that. But I certainly can support God using them to carry out these prophecies against the Jews. And it wouldn't be the first time you read the Bible. This Bible is this thick because most of it's about God dealing with the Jewish people and the stuff they did wrong, and he's got to discipline them one way or another, and he's going to use the Egyptians, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Romans. And so that's what we're looking at. And I think Christians are foolish to think that, okay, because God is fulfilling these promises of returning the Jews to the land, therefore we got to let the Jews get away with murder. No. If those are really promises from God, then they're not delicate. You don't have to lie and connive and deceit and turn a blind eye to the evil that God's going to address. And these are great evils, and the great evil continues. The Bolshevik Revolution that murdered so many millions, tens and tens of millions of people, and much more. There was much more death at the hands of the Bolsheviks than at the hands of, 10 times more than what happened against the Jews in Germany, for instance. And they wanted to bring Bolshevism into Europe, and they were starting with Germany, and that's why, General Patton said we fought on the wrong side of the war. We should have been fighting against the Bolshevik Semites. And I'm all for that, and I agree with General Patton 100%. But the timing, the American people, and what's particularly upsetting is to think that probably the majority ethnic group in America at the time of World War II was Germans, and they went over there and they murdered all these other Germans. That was Eisenhower. Even after they surrendered, 1 million of them were just starved to death, standing up, and as if they had done this on purpose to Jews, which is not the case. If you look into it, you'll see. So the Americans and British were under the spell of the control of the Jews, and that's what the media is all about. That's the New York Times. They're continuing to push their Bolshevik revolution here around the world. They're trying to get everybody on their same Neo-Babylonian anti-God page, and they use the media. They use, now they're going to, of course, use the internet because they got out of control. They use the schools, the government, of course, everything the government does. And this is why, I don't believe, I don't believe in America. I come to realize that, the founding, what I call the founding F-tards, the founding fathers were evil people who were doing the work of Satan by telling people that they had to unite. You'll notice that the great uniters are the ones who are the great satanic murderers, the people that want to unite everybody. And this is what's wrong. So I was looking at Okay, deadly clashes in Venezuela. Well, who's behind that? It's the Americans, right? Okay, this was an interesting article about when the British pulled out of India and created Pakistan and all the people that got murdered because they were Sikhs, Hindus and Muslims forced to live together in one of these fake unities like United States. And as soon as the British pulled out, there was all these people murdered because they weren't supposed to be living together in the first place. And that's, coming to America, it's definitely coming to Europe sooner because they're bringing in all those Muslims. And then the purpose there is, of course, to have a bloodbath against the white people. And it's all orchestrated and sponsored and funded by the Jews, who orchestrate and fund. And I'm not talking about the regular Jews who live down the street. I'm talking about the ones that control the world. Unfortunately, the Jew who lives down the street has been convinced that he has to take sides with those evil ones. And so, the evil ones don't care if the regular Jew gets murdered in the process, that they could care less. So this is what's going to happen eventually in America too. They want to keep bringing in the war on whites and create a bloodbath. So I don't know what's going to happen. Other than that's why I'm behind this. For instance, Christian secessionists. I'm a Christian secessionist. I don't think that, if I'm a Christian, why am I forced to be part of this synagogue of Satan? You're kind of forced to pay for it and everything like that. And I think Christians would do well to address this situation and say, hey, we're not going to be part of it. America's a big country. We're going to declare independence. We're going to make a declaration of independence from the United States, and we're going to start our own country. That's what should happen. If it doesn't happen, there will be, a major, like my friends' kids will probably martyred at that point, by the time they get to be my age. But, sometimes here's the thing. Maybe that's what God wants. God might want martyrs at that point. He might, if you're martyred for Christ, you go to heaven, and the early church, that's what happened to them. They were in a situation where they denounced the kingship of Caesar. I mean, they paid their taxes, but they said Caesar's not king, Jesus is king, kind of thing. And that's how they got murdered. But it didn't matter in terms of the long-term history of the plan of God. The blood of the martyrs was sort of the seed of this. And I, here's where I differ from a lot of my friends and Christian friends, that as Christ has been in the world for 2,000 years, I would think that you should see expressions of Christian theocracies. That would be my natural conclusion as to what's the effect of having Christ living in the world for so long. I'm not alone in thinking that the reason that we've recently experienced a couple centuries of this progress and prosperity and so forth is because of the Christian morality. Now the thing is, Christianity is not, the goal of Christianity is not to have people living moral lives so much as it is to have people dependent on Christ to direct their lives. And you'd think that if Christ is directing lives for 2,000 years, there would be as the Prince of Peace, you you would think that there would be a more peaceful world and so forth. And I suppose you could say, well, it's because people, even though they called themselves Christians, they were living moral lives by default. In the long run, we weren't really living in a situation where people were depending so much on their individual direction to come from Christ directly. See, I mean, that's the thing I like about this house church thing I'm part of is the emphasis is on seeking, direction from Christ, in every 24/7, in every move you make, and every breath you take, sort of expression of Christianity is dependent on the direction of the Holy Spirit, and that's why if it's God's will to say, okay, well, yes, my friends' children, when they get to be my age, are going to be martyred, then that's what that's not my call. I'd rather see that that they would inherit a earth that has been redeemed through Christian obedience to God. But see, not everybody's a Christian, and I certainly don't subscribe to this idea that we should enforce Christian laws on non-Christians. But I have no problem with Christian secession and establishing Christian theocracy. And probably my biggest union with Red Ice Radio and neo-ethnic paganism is that they believe in the freedom to association and establish their own. It's funny that the United Nations, one of their objectives is to see to it that the people groups have the freedom to determine their own destiny, which is like the opposite of what they're doing. Of course, that's one of the oldest tricks in the book. They say one thing, do the opposite. So I certainly believe that in the idea that people groups should have the right to and the freedom to pursue their own destiny. And if you want an ethnic state, you're more than welcome to it, and you have, as far as I'm concerned, every God-given right to do that. And really, forced integration or forced separation, either one of those two things is wrong. So it's the people of force, the control freaks that use force to forcefully integrate, are the evil people, and it would be just as evil if they were forcefully segregating people who voluntarily wanted to integrate. So anybody who sees trouble and would rather not integrate has the right not to do, to separate. And I think that as Christians, that should be our main concern, is seeing to it that people have the right to separate. I mean, that's what Jesus was all about, separation, separating the wheat from the tares and the sheep from the goats. And he didn't come to bring peace, but a sword, and a sword of separation. So as Christians, we should be separatists, because God is a separatist and Jesus is a separatist, and we should be separatists. Now, whether you want to base your separatism on ethnicity or religion, it doesn't matter. To me, personally, my separatism is based on religion. And this idea that you're going to have multiple religions. See, when you try to do something like the United States, where you have multiple religions and they're supposed to be equal, then you've just violated those religions. You just trashed those religions. You just trivialized them. And you're doing the work of the devil. And so that's why, I agree that, America's the great Satan. because it was the First Nation that decided that they were going to trivialize religion and make it bend the knee to humanism. And I'd have more respect for the United States if they said, okay, look, this is a humanist nation, and if you're not a humanist, we're going to facilitate your separation, and you could have a non-humanist nation. There's plenty of land here. That I would respect. I'd even respect it more if they just say, look, we're a humanist nation, and ultimately your religion has to bend the knee to humanism. That they should just come out and say it instead of enforcing it and pretending like that's not what's happening. I'm not that stupid. That the founding fathers thought we were all idiots. That's why they're the evil ones. I'm not an idiot. I can see what's going on. I wasn't born yesterday. Okay, so this was interesting. So they put this together. They're bemoaning this idea that there's people out there who lack a nationality or a country, and so you see, this is the typical hypocrisy. That they don't want whites to have a nationality or a country, but they're so concerned about people that don't have a nationality or country. Ooh, we're so concerned. We're so loving and kind and so forth. Yeah. So let's see here. Hassan Shibli, a lawyer with the Council on American Islamic Relations, that's a Jewish-funded organization, said Miss Muthana was not a Yemeni citizen. He provided a birth certificate for her that showed she was born in Hackensack, New Jersey. So this is somebody who was born in New Jersey, defected to Syria, says, and became radicalized, which I don't believe that either. But anyways. And then she wants to come back, and they don't want her back because I think there's another person here too that, in this article, about somebody who was born in Britain, did the same thing. So you got this Human Rights Watch was as a joke also. If they're stateless, where are they going to go? He said, no country has any obligation to take them. That is not a recipe for a stable government. It's likely the recipe for more radicalization. So think about that. What about whites? What about whites when they want to stand up for their a nationality or identity, and they're denied it? Where's these lawyers there? See, and they're kind of justifying radicalization. But then they're calling whites who want they want to have an ethnic state or something like that as radicals. Well, that's all right with me. Okay, so there's one about about Venezuela. We know what that is all about. It's the IMF trying to control them. Yeah, this was really interesting thing about India and so forth. That it's just coming to the West. What they did over there is on the way. It's pretty horrendous. People killing each other because they shouldn't have been together in the first place. So anyway, I'm not going to bother reading all the New York Times. You get the gist. You can just tell by the headlines. All right, here's one where it seems like, okay, they're standing up for this woman who was a victim. She was a victim of Islamic terrorism when the Americans went over there and destroyed one of those nations that was relatively stable because the Americans decided, and the international Jews that run America decided they wanted chaos over there, and so this woman is one of the many. They wasn't a Muslim and got raped and so forth, and she escaped. But of course, the New York Times is using this as a reason for them. Okay, the people that own the New York Times are owned by the same people that created the situation. for her to get raped in the first place. And then now they're acting like she's going to come to them for protection, see? Because they're such good people, they want to protect her, you know. So, you know, this is what we're up against. I think that. Oh, by the way, if you're watching this video, you've found your way to the dark corners of the internet. I think I have one of the most shadow banned channels on YouTube. I got one new subscriber in the last 2 years, I think it was. So I'm super shadow banned now. I am trying to participate in this exodus from YouTube. And I looked at BitChute and DTube and so forth, and they have this thing called a referral number. I don't know what that is or how to get one, so I haven't been able to get on those other channels. If somebody knows, maybe they could put notes in my comments section about how you go about getting a referral number for one of those other platforms. I didn't have a chance to ask my friend, the computer guy. He would probably know, but I can't. I don't know myself how to get one of them. You know, nobody gave me a referral code. I don't know. It doesn't tell you how to get one. It just tells you got to put it in there. I don't know how to get it. It doesn't say. There's nothing there guiding you. So anyway, because I wanted to, what I want to do, I came up with this great idea. I wish I had a little. I had this idea for my BitChute channel. I'm gonna have this here rainbow flag. Okay, it's gonna be. Let's see, how do you do this? Something like this here. Okay, so I was gonna have this sort of rainbow swastika. That's gonna be the Rainbow Swastika Bible Study channel. And so I figured, well, the rainbow has to do with the passage in Genesis where the earth was flooded, and then God promised he would never flood the earth again. And that was when that was the symbol of the rainbow. God said, the rainbow would be a reminder for him not to flood the earth again. And the swastika is just it's a real inexpensive way to get a lot of attention. So I figured, I don't have anything really against National Socialism. It's not like, so I don't want to say it, but it's not meant to associate myself necessarily with Nazi or National Socialism. Not that I have anything against those. It's just that it's a cheap way of getting a lot of attention, and the Bible would call that good stewardship because I'm saving money. I don't have to advertise it. That swastika will do a lot of advertising for me for free. See, so I would encourage everybody to take advantage of that simple money-saving tool there, and adopt the swastika as your emblem, especially a rainbow swastika. That would be really good because the liberals and the Bolshevik control freaks would have a hard time dealing that with, because if they condemn your rainbow, you can accuse them of being homophobic or something. See, even though my rainbow has nothing to do with LGBT, you could still make that accusation. And so I love it.